I've got to start and I've got to ask. It's a midweek sweep after getting swept on the weekend, and the hidden ball trick came out. The hidden ball trick. You'll love to see it. How did the things go for you as you were able to watch this team in Malibu?
It was great. This was the get right moment that this team, I think, desperately needed, and for more emphasis on the offensive side of it too. So many things happened with this team in 2 days that I think you look at the weekend before against UCLA and thought, okay, strikeout numbers were abysmal going into this series against Pepperdine. Runners in scoring position was really bad. I mean, at one point that UCLA game, Nebraska was 0 for 14 with that situation. So it wasn't a matter of getting guys on base. It was being able to drive them in. That all changed against Pepperdine. And this is, Ben and I talked about this in the broadcast. This wasn't an apples to apples conversation when it came to comparing Nebraska, the struggles against UCLA and the success they had against Pepperdine, because Pepperdine is not nearly as good of a team as UCLA. Pepperdine is struggling on their own. But there were things about Pepperdine that we did walk away from that series somewhat impressed. I mean, for a team that has a really bad collective batting average, I mean, they were scrapping at bats. They were putting some pressure. They were getting some swings on some good pitches. So, it wasn't all like all of a sudden Nebraska played just the most inept team in the world. But the bottom line is you had an opportunity against a team that was going to throw a bunch of different arms that also was struggling on the mound a little bit. Could Nebraska finally take advantage of that? And you think about this one too, Caleb, the success that Nebraska had offensively, they did so without key bats in their lineup, guys that they're sitting right now. And, a guy like Gabe Swanson, we didn't see a lot of Case Sanderson either, so those are two guys that you would hope that at some point are going to be back in this lineup and are going to be able to contribute. But great to see Dylan Carey with the multi-home run game yesterday. He was the only guy who didn't have a hit in Tuesday's game, but he had some hard hit balls. And then yesterday he's able to be like, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do today. Tyler Stone is swinging a hot bat right now too. Watching guys like Devin Nunez as a freshman continuing to do some good things. That 7 through 9 on Tuesday was a collective 6 of 9 at the plate. And then 7 through 9 collectively in this series had 10 hits. So that you saw production all throughout the lineup, but it also came down to situational hitting too. When Nebraska got runners on, they had 2 perfectly executed hit and runs where you get from first to third, and they were able to attack the vacated hole in the 6 hole over by the shortstop when he had to cover the bag with the runner taking off. So twice that happened. Nebraska, this is kind of a crazy stat. Going into the Pepperdine series, they did not have a sacrifice bunt. They had a couple of bunts for hits, but they did not have a sacrifice bunt. They were able to get 1 and 2 of the season in this series too. So it was the situational hitting more than anything for Nebraska. And it came from so many different players that there is no question. And they got a big challenge starting tomorrow night against USC. USC is no joke, but you needed to take care of business. You needed to get right, both physically and mentally in the batter's box. And I think Nebraska definitely was able to use this 2-game series against Pepperdine to do exactly that. Not a great Pepperdine team, but a team that, hey, that's who was on your schedule, and Nebraska took care of that, especially offensively.
How many times over the first month plus of this season had we seen a situation which happened yesterday, and Nebraska didn't take advantage of it, but yesterday they did. Riley Silva stretching a sliding double. You get an overthrow, turns it into he's now on third, and there's no outs. Mm-hmm. And there are plenty of other times, not that exact situation, but other times you're in similar situations and he doesn't score.
Right.
And that's, yes, it's Pepperdine, but that's who's on your schedule. But yesterday you got that guy home. And you, as you were saying, the timely hitting finally showed up both the last couple of days. I saw this stat yesterday, and I can't remember who shared it. But is this right that Nebraska had no strikeouts yesterday for the first time since a game in 2014?
No, they did not. And they only had 2 the day before. So think about that, the strikeout numbers that were so high. And I know that this was something that this entire coaching staff was really working hard on trying to address, trying to get through to the hitters, look at that approach and everything that they're seeing and be able to communicate back and forth that way. That was, I know, a heavy emphasis going into this Pepperdine series. And you get 2-2 games compared to at one point, I don't know what the final number was against UCLA, but in the 3 games, it was 31, I think.
Yeah, it
total.
was over 30, yeah.
Yeah, so to not strike out once and to do so the only 2 times was the first inning of Tuesday's game. They had 2 Ks. And after that, so you essentially you go 16 innings without a strikeout. I mean, so you're going to take that without question. And it was that you mentioned the play there of why am I just completely blanking on the player you just brought up on the double?
Riley Silva.
Oh, yeah, Silva, thank you. The Silva one, that one was hilarious because the ball gets away from the first baseman. You had to try to pick it, and so it gets into shallow right field. And so Riley Silva just does not hesitate. And so he's rounding first, and all of a sudden they probably have him dead in the water at second, but then they overthrow that. I mean, he pops right back up, and then he's motoring into third base. So that's how you lead off an inning. And then it's Hogan Haligzo who hits the ball on the screws, but right to the shortstop. And so the run doesn't score. But then Joshua Overby comes back up, hits a little bit more of a soft ground ball over to the right side. That does score it. But then Hogan Haligzo able to drive in a couple of runs as well. So, I mean, it was almost like the game found everybody that was putting in the work in the batter's box. Dylan Carey, who hit some hard balls on Tuesday, he was rewarded on Wednesday with 2 home runs. So I can't feel better for this team of what they were struggling with it offensively, where they were able to almost kind of vent at the plate, if you will, kind of let out their frustrations against Pepperdine pitching. And here's the other thing. It was one thing to get out on top early in the game, but so many times we've seen Nebraska maybe go through innings 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and there's no offense at all. They were relentless. They were putting up multiple crooked numbers, but then every time Pepperdine had an answer, Nebraska came right back and took it back. And so they were just absolutely killing the will of that team with what they were able to do offensively. They were bullying Pepperdine offensively, which we can't say we've seen a whole heck of a lot with this team.
Scored in 7 of the 9 innings yesterday. It was incredibly impressive, the number of times that, we just talked about UCLA on Sunday, where got to, after scoring in the 3rd inning, only got 1 player to second base the rest of the game. Against Pepperdine yesterday, scored in 7 of the 9 innings, including a couple of crooked numbers on there. A little bit Johnny Holstaff yesterday. Tuesday, though, Carson Yasa continues to look really good. What did you see from this pitching staff, especially Yasa, in playing a really key midweek role for this program?
Yeah, he's really coming to form, and I think this is exactly what Rob Childers expected from him, is being able to display that big league fastball. And he hit 97 a couple of times on Tuesday, but his breaking ball, and he's coming with a slide piece right now that has been now with Wichita State and then Pepperdine has really been his money pitch. And he's locating that. He's able to get that in plus counts. He's able to I mean, there was probably several times I didn't even count. I probably should have, how many times he led off each batter with the slider and not the fastball. The fastball almost became the complementary pitch for him. So I think, and that's the adjustment that you make from being a dominant high school pitcher where you can throw 90 plus at somebody. And by doing so, even if it's not in the zone, you're going to intimidate them so much that you're going to get them to swing violently just because they're almost protection swings. In college, that's you got to be able to really prove your worth when it comes to what you have for an arsenal of pitching. And I think his ability to locate that breaking ball the way he has and has never looked better in these last 2 games. In doing so, that fastball comes in so much heavier. I mean, 95 plus is a heavy fastball no matter what. But when you're able to locate the breaking ball the way he has, that 97-mile-an-hour fastball must feel like an absolute earth-shattering pitch coming into those hitters. And I don't care what the skill level of those hitters are. So that was good. And then I want to give compliment to TJ Coates, who didn't have the start that he wanted to against Wichita State a week ago, but was able to go further into the start yesterday. And a similar recipe as we saw Carson Yasa. TJ Coates was hitting 94 miles an hour. I believe at one point he did hit 95. And he was also throwing a real good off speed, good assortment of a changeup and the breaking ball that he was able to locate early on as well. And that allowed him to stay in that game early. He was getting in some plus counts. And even when he would get behind, he was starting to battle back. So I think there were some very positive steps taken by TJ Coates. And Kaleb, you remember how bad the midweek portion of Nebraska on what otherwise was a fantastic season. That midweek is what kept Nebraska from hosting a regional. They have flipped that obviously right now. I mean, they're midweek wise, they're unbeaten. So that's off to a good start, but it really does start on the mound. The only guy that probably had an off day, if you will, out of the bullpen for Nebraska that has been lights out to this point that I think has just been fantastic is Price Bender. Price Bender is a freshman. He's a strike thrower. He's got that sidearm delivery. He's got that deceptive release and balance point. So he's always given hitters other things to think about other than the type of pitch that's going to be coming across the plate. He was getting behind hitters a little bit more. He was a little more hittable than he's been in previous outings, but he's also one of those guys that I think even as a freshman, he's built up so much equity that you just chalk that up as a one-off or just a tough day that he'll be able to rebound. And Clevenger wasn't as sharp as he has been as well. Other than that, everybody who I think handled the baseball in the two games on the mound for Nebraska gave you a lot more positives than negatives. So it was good work out of the bullpen. We saw, Luke Broderick having to come in at 1.2 and nail it down, and he did so. So everybody got the work that I think they needed to, but I think for the most part, collectively, that effort was pretty solid on the mound, even though there was maybe a little bit more runs, especially that Tuesday night game than we had anticipated.
I'm going to preface this with saying none of this is easy. I'll just say that to begin with. Hitting a baseball, not easy.
Yeah.
But if you are sitting fastball and a breaking ball comes in, it is a little bit easier to adjust. There's a timing aspect to it. If you're sitting off speed, if you're sitting slider, because that slider's hitting the zone, and then 97 comes in, you can't quicken up your hands enough for that. And I like that adjustment for Yasa. That was always fun. Again, different level to start out for me, curveballs, and then the fastball be that FU pitch because now you're behind. And he's throwing about 10 miles an hour faster than I ever did. and to do that to guys, that's really good to see out of a young guy, and obviously getting really good coaching. But there's going to be times where you want to get ahead with the fastball, times you want to get ahead with that slider. But if he can be really good with that off-speed pitch, that bodes well for the future of getting him to the weekend.
Absolutely. And I think there's going to be a time that we're going to have this conversation of what type of pro potential I shouldn't even say potential because that's already there. Yeah. But what is he able to do to put himself in the conversation of the top 3 rounds going forward? Now, he's still got a lot of baseball to play, still got some growth. But, going back to just what you talked about with the fastball, think about 6'7", 97 miles an hour as opposed to 6 foot 97 miles an hour. The distance that he's cutting off by the time he's releasing that ball, you have even that much less time to react to his fastball. And then, he's hammering you with a backdoor slider. Or all of a sudden you're seeing a spinner that's coming at your shoulder and you're thinking, okay, am I getting fastball spin here? Am I getting slider spin? Is this thing going to hit me? And then all of a sudden it drops right there in the zone. So what I'm getting at is, and again, I don't want to make it sound like, okay, Wichita State was this amazing offensive team and Pepperdine was this amazing offensive team. But when you see the tools that Carson Yasa has always had, and now refining that and developing that, like Rob Childers is with this young man, you see what could be with him. You see how effective he could be. You see a guy that could definitely be a weekend type guy, could definitely be a Friday type guy if he continues to head down the road he is right now. He's had 2 great starts, and then at some point, he's probably going to be called into action in the weekend out of the bullpen. How does he respond to that as well? Is this something that they would only do in an emergency situation because you want to keep them with that starting pitching routine because those routines are so big for these guys? But there's a lot of value in that right arm for Carson Yasa. And I think that's one of those guys that people and even I think scouts in the area are starting to take notice of. You look at the body, you look at the frame, the length, big-time fastball, but now is displaying a pretty explosive breaking ball. Okay, keep your eye on him, because if he keeps developing the way he is this time next year, we might be having some really big conversations about Carson Yassa.
All right, 1-5 in the Big Ten Conference, back into league play this weekend. The road trip continues on that West Coast in LA. USC this weekend. What does that matchup look like for Nebraska? As hopefully this was a get-right series in the midweek, and then can get some positivity going back into the league.
Well, this has been kind of the, I don't want to say the challenge or the alarming development or whatever you want to say, but we remember it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about both what is going on with USC, what is going on with UCLA. Well, we saw UCLA with our own eyes, and this is not just because they beat Nebraska, so we got to talk good about them to make Nebraska feel better. No, I think anybody who has watched UCLA play this year is going to tell you this is a good baseball team. And when we got back on Tuesday night, we just so happened to be home in time to watch USC taking on Arizona State in a midweek game, and USC looks all the part too. I mean, they're 12-8 right now, 2-4 in conference play, so maybe not the same eye-popping numbers as UCLA, but when you look at their lineup, and that was the one thing just watching that game against Arizona State this week, is they've got guys that look the part. They got guys that can swing it. As soon as we sat down, I can't remember which hitter they had, but he was down in their lineup. I think he was their 7 or 8 hole hitter, just hit a massive bomb against Arizona State, who, as we always know, is a quality team as well. So, this is a team that, they got swept by Oregon. Oregon's one of the best teams in the Big Ten. I think Oregon and UCLA are going to be right there at the end. I think a lot of us maybe slept a little bit too much on UCLA, but it's a USC team. They pitch it, I think, a little bit better than UCLA does, but their offense not quite as good. So that is what I think is going to be really interesting, of the type of confidence Nebraska draws from these last 2 games against Pepperdine, against what I think is going to be a little bit better, more established staff at USC compared to UCLA. But also, how does that help guys like Will Walsh? How does that help guys like Ty Horn and Jackson Brockett against maybe not nearly as loaded 1 through 9 of an offense as what they saw the prior weekend in Westwood? So that, to me, is going to be the big challenge for Nebraska. But yeah, this is definitely it's a USC team that is good, but I think it is also a great opportunity for Nebraska to, on a trip that ended so ominously, could end with a lot of success, and that could really springboard Nebraska into that conference play and that success that they need as they now play some more games at home when they get back.
Friday on FS1, Saturday, Sunday on Big Ten Plus, every one of those on the Huskers Radio Network, with, of course, Nick and Ben and the whole gang over there with Huskers Radio Network. It sounded exciting when the hidden ball trick came out. I have to hammer that out, because that was so fun to see, and everyone play their part,
It fooled a lot of us. I didn't even realize what had happened. And Ben was right on it as well. He noticed it, but so we saw Stoney in the hotel lobby afterwards, and we wanted to know if this was something that was signaled from the dugout. Now, the base runner who ended up getting lifted, their coach was Tyler Latour, was not thrilled about what happened to his base runner, so he ended up benching him after that. But Cardinale, he kept, before, as Tyler Stone would release the ball back to TJ Coates, Cardinale would immediately start to get his lead, and Coates went over there probably 5 or 6 times, and it was almost like Cardinale took it as a challenge of, okay, every time he comes over, I'm gonna get off even further, and I'm gonna do it quicker. Yeah. So this is the veteran presence of Tyler Stone realizing this was all him, and TJ Coates just sold it. He was off the rubber, off the mound enough that what you're supposed to be to pull that off.
Yep.
And Tyler Stone just thought, hey, you know what? I'm just going to bluff a throw. So it wasn't even like Tyler Stone threw it. TJ Coates walked around the mound a little bit, and they really tried to sell it. It was just a quick, he threw it, and then TJ Coates acts like he catches it, and then Cardinale thinks, all right, cool. Now I'm going to get my lead. And then, within a second, he tags him out, and you could see Cardinale was absolutely pissed, just pissed. It was one of those things of, I was trying to be overly aggressive. They caught me in it. They used my aggressiveness to their advantage. And that's exactly what Tyler Stone did. He's like, well, I know if I fake this throw, if he has no idea, he's going to jump right off. So it won't even take that long. I mean, no one will even know what's going on. And that was fantastic. And Kaleb, that's usually what you see West Coast baseball, whether we're talking about the old Pac-12 or the West Coast Conference, they usually pull stuff off like that. That's the antics that they usually have, some built-in plays that they can kind of fool you, play a little trickery. And it was Nebraska who took a page out of that to get out of the inning, which was it was quite entertaining.
Yeah, for Husker fans of the College World Series, that's what Long Beach State brings to Omaha.
Yep.
Typically.
Exactly.